Does AOC know what a crime is, even when one is described to her? There was some interesting exchange from that Hunter Biden hearing yesterday. You might remember the one where Vladimir Putin made an appearance. A Democratic member of Congressman, was dressed in a Putin mask. But that's not what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about Tony Bobulinski's grilling by AOC. See what you made of it. Let's play it.
Did you witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime. Did you watch him steal something?
Corruption statutes, RICO and conspiracy.
What is it? What is the crime, sir? Specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption statutes.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category. What is the crime?
It's a category of crimes that you're then charged
You
under
have charges.
A long 100
You
list
have
of
charges. Sir, please
you want me to name the exact statute under RICO?
Yes.
Well, it's funny. In this committee room, everyone's not here. There's over 18
All right, sir. I reclaim my
lawyers
time.
that went to law school.
I reclaim my time.
All right,
Okay,
is RICO a crime?
A lot of blowback.
Yeah, and it seems well deserved. Look, it seems like what she was going after is a gotcha moment where she was attempting to pin him down on a specific crime that can be tied to Joe Biden. As you know from our coverage, that kind of red herring, smoking gun rather, hasn't quite materialized for Republicans, and it's ground this investigation kind of to a halt. But you know what they always say, don't ask a question on cross that you don't already know the answer to. She opened herself up to the witness saying, yes, there was a crime and it was RICO, and she seemed almost flustered, and her only retort was, well, that's not a crime. Now, that's a surprise to everyone who's been watching Donald Trump getting charged with RICO down in the Georgia case.
Right.
And so there were a lot of comments that say, okay, well, this is new. Somebody better tell Fani Willis that RICO, in fact, isn't a crime. Now, of course,
you have to use Tinder to get a hold of her.
Stop, Robby. So, we've talked about RICO in and of itself and whether or not it is a law that allows the police to have too much latitude, frankly, prosecutors to have too much latitude. The Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, it was intended to help get members of the mob who you couldn't necessarily tie to a specific crime because they were too high up the ladder, as it were, but we're directing some of the crime that was happening on the ground and the violence that was happening on the ground. So a separate question is whether or not Bobulinski can actually demonstrate that there was a RICO crime that Joe Biden is tied to. But certainly she did give him a kind of a moment that did not look good for her and her case.
Right, because it wasn't vague what he was accusing him of.
Right.
The part for debate is whether the fact that Joe Biden was in the room or participated in phone calls or was at the dinner means that he was complicit in this underlying criminal activity, and that needs to be borne out. But what he is being considered by people who find it plausible to have done is not unclear.
Right.
It is corruption, and corruption is illegal for public officials.
Right.
And I think she expected to get a gotcha on him for that, but it totally backfired.
Your question was too broad. It wasn't, is there a crime? It's describe the crime. And if it's what he's described in the past, I think, like you said, there's really important questions about whether or not that actually constitutes something that would rise to the level of impeachment. So it might be helpful to read from his written statement that he made prior to his testimony yesterday. He said, I wanted to be crystal clear from my direct personal experience and what I have subsequently come to learn. It is clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family. His family's foreign influence peddling operation from China to Ukraine and elsewhere sold out to foreign actors who were seeking to gain influence and access to Joe Biden and the United States government. He says Joe Biden was more than a participant in and beneficiary of his family's business. He was an active, aware enabler who met with business associates, such as myself, to further the business, despite being buffered by a complex scheme to maintain plausible deniability.
But the new Democratic point of view is that all of this is illegitimate because that one other guy met with Russian intelligence. Not this guy.
Sure, but I don't think that's the limits of the Democrats' argument.
That's the one they're going. I mean, they wore a Putin mask to the
Sure,
to the hearing.
that guy did. But the Democrats' argument has been, you have an obligation to prove the crime. And I don't know
that's
that.
true.
And
They do.
Yeah, and I don't know that just saying that the brand. Look, to me personally, the question of whether or not Hunter Biden's behavior and holding out his father as an inducement to people contracting with him in these business deals that clearly have no relationship to his actual experience or value add to the companies is not in dispute. That seems to be obviously what happened. But the hard part is that Hunter Biden isn't president of the United States of America, and throwing Hunter Biden in jail doesn't really do anything for anybody. It's a political question as to whether or not people who are opposed to Joe Biden's politics because they're Republicans can get him out of office. And so you can hear in Bobulinski's testimony that he's trying to say,
what a fun name.
I was in the room. I feel like I am the subject upon which Joe Biden operated and holding himself out as the brand. I just don't know, however, that is enough. This kind of case is notoriously difficult to prove. That's why they kind of came up with RICO in the first instance, because saying that Tony Soprano somewhere ordered this when he's sitting in his house in New Jersey feeding the ducks doesn't necessarily fly when it comes to the kind of evidence that you need for court.
Especially because a lot of the most, I think, suspicious activities surrounding this case, frankly, have to do with how various law enforcement agencies and prosecutors handled Hunter Biden, including, of course, the sweetheart deal, going after him on guns and drugs, and then allowing a kind of narrative to be about, oh, how dare we criminalize this poor, suffering substance abuser when, gratuitous pictures of him with hookers and drugs aside, the real, which is just salacious, but the real public interest is in was a greater investigation into what he was doing, stymied, or going to be stymied if that deal was accepted, where he pleads guilty to things that are not, frankly, of public significance in terms of some of this other stuff.
Yeah, and to bring this back to AOC just a little bit, I mean, Glenn Greenwald made the point that he actually tagged me into this because I had made, as part of one of my podcast episodes for my own show last week, a montage talking about how AOC once was so vocal about being anti-corruption and how she wanted to be a disruptor in the Democratic Party and be against so many of the things that, even if they are not provable crimes against Joe Biden, are being suggested by his behavior here. And now she's on the exact opposite of this. So he says last week, Bri Joy put together a 90-second video montage showing how AOC spent the first 2 years of her career vowing to subvert and disrupt the Dem Party. Now she's one of the most loyal party members, spending her day defending Hunter Biden's sleazy deals in Ukraine. And it is difficult not to read this as a wild diversion from the kinds of activities that the Justice Democrats sent her to Congress to engage with. It seems like
she has dutifully fallen in line in terms of defending Joe Biden from all sides.
Yes, and this feels like a choice. There are many people who could and have engaged in this sort of questioning, putting your face on this of all of the issues that are before Congress right now. It doesn't help her public image with the left, who have been pretty disgruntled, feeling like they did not get what they paid for when they supported her campaign, knocked doors, donated money, hosted her on various left media outlets, and really fought for her to join Congress back in 2018, when the hope was that the presence of more progressive-minded people could shift the caucus to the left. It appears increasingly like the opposite has happened, at least in some instances.
They were shifted to the right, or to the establishment.
To the center, to the dreadful center.
The dreadful center. Not a place you will find either of us. More Rising right after this.